Let's be real, 90% of the guys in the gym still look like shit. Too much body fat or no muscle where it actually matters. Most waste years chasing size and never end up actually looking good. If you're going down this path, then that stops today. If you follow the advice that I lay out in this video, not only will you look bigger, but you'll look better while doing it. The first point is V-taper proportions. Odds are if you're working out, at least a small part of it is so that you look more attractive so that you can get an attractive girl. And the best way to do this is to build a V-taper. What I mean by this is you want your upper body to look like an inverted triangle. You want your shoulders to be nice and big and then a small waist. You also want some big lats to fill that triangle in, and that's going to give you that V shape. This isn't just me saying this. This is backed up by studies that explain that this is the most aesthetic physique. You don't have to get this intense, but there is a measurement out there if you're interested in that. And that's, you want your shoulders 60% wider than your waist is. This is still something I'm working on too. My shoulders are about 50% wider than my waist is. So now that I just went into a bulk, my focus is on building up my shoulders and a few other weak points to make myself look more aesthetic.
Watch the game change, yeah. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. I do not gamble, but bet on me.
Before I get into the next point, I want to let you guys know about my free fitness accountability group on Discord. If you're looking for a group of guys who are just as into fitness as you are, then I definitely recommend checking it out. I'll drop the link for that down in the description of this video. I'd love to have you there. Anyways, guys, I gotta go get a haircut here. Not gonna get much taken off just because I'm trying to grow it out, but we're gonna clean it up and at least make it look halfway decent. Now, the biggest thing you need to do in order to get that V-taper is to make sure that you're in an ideal body fat percentage. Now, to be honest, body fat percentages are kind of a pain in the ass to calculate. You either have to spend hundreds of dollars for an accurate measurement or use methods that honestly just aren't accurate. So the best thing that I've found is to keep an eye on your abs. They're going to be the biggest game changer in terms of aesthetics. And ideally, you have abs even when you're on a bulk. So in order to make that happen, you need to make sure that you lose enough weight when you do a cut so that you have room to bulk and still put on weight and keep your abs. So the best way that I've found to do this is when you're doing a cut until you can see your abs, even when the lighting's not very good. If you can just start seeing your abs on like a sunny day or when there's downward light pointing directly on your abs, then I'd still recommend cutting. When you do a bulk, this is when you want to stop, is when you can only see your abs kind of faintly in hard light that is good at showing off muscle definition, like a sunny day. In terms of bulking, I definitely recommend doing a lean bulk. I used to do dirty bulks all the time, and honestly, although they are good at putting on muscle, the problem is you spend half the year bulking, put on a ton of muscle, but you also put on a shit ton of fat, and then you have to spend the other half of the year cutting. And when you're cutting, you're not in a caloric state where you're going to be putting on a whole lot of muscle. If you're putting on muscle at all, you may even be losing some. And being in that state for a long period of time really inhibits your muscle growth. So what you're much better off doing is bulking slowly, putting on very minimal amounts of body fat when you're bulking. And that way you spend the majority of the year in a bulk. And then you only need to cut for a month, maybe 2 months tops. This will make sure that you're spending the majority of a year in a caloric state where you're actually putting on muscle. And then when you do cut, you're doing it for a very minimal amount of time. You might put on muscle a little more slowly, but since you're putting it on more often, you're going to put on a lot more muscle in the long run. So in order to build up your upper torso, you need to focus on building up your delts. This is going to be the top of that triangle that I was talking about earlier. To build these up, you want to focus on all three heads, so your rear delts, your side delts, and your front delts. When you do exercises for them, I'd also opt for like cable ones. When you work with cables on your delts, especially on like lateral raises and stuff, you're going to be starting out with tension at the side instead of with a dumbbell. You won't be starting out to up here. Aside from this, I'd also focus on working out your upper chest. That's going to fill in the space between your shoulders, and it's also going to make your side profile pop. So for your upper chest, the biggest one's going to be incline flies or presses. Those are both going to target the upper chest pretty well. Another muscle group you want to focus on to build that upper torso is your lats. These are going to add width to your back. Even when you're looking at yourself from the front, you're still going to be able to see your lats. That'll again get you that triangle figure. For these, lat pull downs are going to be your best friend, or pull up, stuff like that. Now, just because I don't mention other muscles doesn't mean you shouldn't put some effort into them. However, you do want to put more of a focus and a little more effort into the muscles that I did mention. That way you're building them up and making sure that you're building that aesthetic triangle. Now, if you're a guy and you want to have an aesthetic physique, then alongside this triangle shape, you want to make sure that you have big arms. Now, the problem here is that most guys think that they need to focus on their biceps. And while you're not wrong, you also need to make sure that you're focusing on your triceps too, as they're the muscle group that actually takes up the majority of your arm. The secret to big arms is triceps. Now, I'm not even going to lie to you, man. This is definitely a weakness of mine. I got very long arms as I'm over 6 feet tall, and I struggle to put size on them. One thing that I am doing though during this bulk is putting a big focus on them to fix this. Another thing that I'm doing is making sure that I up the volume. So the amount of sets that I do every week, I was only doing like 6 to 10, and this wasn't enough. So I've pretty much doubled that during this bulk. I've also been focusing on like some advanced techniques like drop sets or myo reps, or even partial reps at the end of set. All of these in an attempt to bring up the size of my arms. Now, another thing that most guys miss when building up their arms is building up the forearm. Like, forearms are the first thing that people see in a t-shirt, especially if it's like an oversized one. So you want to make sure that you're building those up and putting some focus onto them. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of forearm work while you're doing back exercises, but those are mostly isometric. In order to build big forearms, you definitely want to be making sure that you are hitting them with some forearm focused exercises. Now, I did talk about abs a little bit earlier when I talked about the body fat percentage, but that's just half of the equation. If you want good abs, and if you want to make sure that your abs are visible even at higher body fat percentages, which I do recommend so that you can bulk longer, then what you need to do is make sure that you are training them. You want to be directly targeting abs at least twice a week, if not more. This is another area that I'm trying to build up, as during this past cut, I had to get to a pretty low body fat percentage before I could visibly see all 6 of them. So I want to make sure that they're built up a lot more. I honestly didn't really focus on them before this bulk that I'm doing right now, but honestly, that was a mistake. I should definitely have been training them a little bit harder. Now I'm making up for it during this bulk and trying to actually hit them frequently. Another thing to keep in mind though when I'm building an aesthetic physique is you can have the nicest upper body, but if your legs are tiny, then you're going to look stupid. So make sure you're not neglecting those and that you're training them. That said, you don't have to put all your effort into them. You want to train them normally most of the year. However, there should be like a 2-month stint that you do, at least one a year, where you focus on the muscles that I mentioned in this video and not neglect the other ones, but not put a whole lot of emphasis into them. Just train them enough to maintain their current muscle mass and put the rest into the muscles you're trying to build up. This way you're not putting too much stress on your system, and the muscle growth that you do put on is going to be on these focused areas. But only do that for a month or 2 and then go back into training how you normally would and focusing on all of your muscle groups. And then repeat this maybe once, twice a year. If you've been doing a cut for the summer and are wondering if it's time to start bulking again, then check out this video that I made right here. It talks about just that. Don't forget to join my free fitness accountability group down in the description of this video, and don't forget to click subscribe.